It's a Carrots and Price for Tuesday, October 8th. Got me an echo here. Tuesday, October 8th, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. Turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at Wall Center. Enjoy an exclusive Carrots and Price rate. Yeah, it's back. The S&P rate. Ask for it. 604-331-1000. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. Man, Sakaris alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. If you're just discovering this show, well, welcome. If you're just coming back from a long summer, well, pleased to have you back in the fold. And those of you who have ridden with us through the summer and when the Canucks bowed out of the Stanley Cup playoffs last June, thank you for your ongoing support. This show is now noon daily, debuted that yesterday. Pleased to have everybody aboard on what was a very successful first day for us. Getting going at noon, high noon Pacific time. So we will start today, Blake Price, with the poll question, as we always do. Are the Canucks a better team on paper? On paper, are they a better team than the one that finished last season? What says you?
I will say, and there's a lot of interpretations of the question because guys that were on the roster or guys that were healthy and playing at that moment. I'll go liberally and say just the people that are on the roster. And I will say it's a dead heat, but I'll give the edge to last year. The center depth, the
defense depth too.
If Nikita Zadorov's on this team, I'm not because he's an all-world player, but I think that he swings how good the defense is. If Nikita Zadorov's on this team, I'm going to say this team, but he's not, so I'm going to say that it's last year.
Yeah, well, if Nikita Zadorov is on this team, there's a good chance that Dan
other players aren't.
Right. Some combination thereof are not. As we know, they wanted Zadorov back. It was a cap space matter, and the big Russian saying he felt a little disrespected by negotiations with the Canucks last year. They're definitely better on the wing. Don't think they're as good at center ice minus Elias Lindholm. I mean, let's face it, Elias Lindholm is a top two centerman for just about every team in the league. They had incredible depth at that position last year in the postseason. I don't think they're quite as good on defense yet either. They're certainly deeper in goal now, adding another NHL caliber goaltender in Kevin Lankinen to Archer's she loves. I know Demko didn't finish last season, so it depends on your treatment there. I have said no, but of course they are accruing cap space this year as opposed to being an LTIR. So I anticipate they will be adding some reinforcements as
this is the ebb and flow.
Right? Yeah, I mean, and this management group has shown itself to be aggressive
during
they're
the season.
Going for it. Yeah, exactly. So I think by trade deadline, check back. And I think the answer very well might change. You can vote on our poll question at the Sakaris and Price X and YouTube channels. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Yellow Dog Spirits, and Foolish Winery. Aatu Räty makes the team. Arshdeep Bains does not. Although, and the Canucks hinted at this yesterday, it might not be Aatu Räty for opening night. He is skating as the 13th forward at practice today. It was quite a rise for the young Finnish centerman, of course, acquired from the New York Islanders in the Bo Horvat trade. Once upon a time, as a 15, 16-year-old, Räty had some heat as a potential first overall. It didn't go well from there. He became a second-round pick, but there is all sorts of pedigree in this player, and he was the absolute star of training camp that gets him on the opening night roster, if not the opening night lineup. Let's hear from General Manager Patrik Allvin, who outlined how much Räty impressed.
Räty now is going into his third year pro and learning the details, playing a 200-foot game, very smart, committed, and just coming in every day to prove something. And he earned every day here. That being said, it's not going to get any easier. You're going to continue to work hard, and the competition we have on roster spots, and so far he's still here.
And that's the thing, is that he's made the team, the roster, but it doesn't look like he's made the team for opening night. And granted, he's going to be making the NHL salary while others down on the farm are not. But he's still got a rung to climb here. Like, he's got to get into the lineup. That's going to be the true victory for him. So he's got work left to do.
Well, the last sentence there, so far he's still here. Darren Dreger told us yesterday on this program exclusively, it looks like 3 to 4 weeks for Dakota Joshua. So if he does start as the 13th forward, you'd be looking at him being the first one down if Dakota Joshua makes his return. But of course, so much can happen in these intervening 3 or 4 weeks, including other injuries. Who knows? Maybe
establishing himself.
Yeah, maybe substitutions made via performance. So it is Pius Suter back in the middle of that third line between Nils Höglander and Connor Garland. Nice to see Connor Garland back. First time he has skated with the main group since Friday. There was a little bit of question mark earlier in the week, according to Coach Tocchet, about his availability for opening night. Tomorrow, of course, against the Calgary Flames at Rogers Arena. And this makes good on what Tocchet had pledged earlier in training camp, that Pius Suter would move back to center this year after spending a good portion of last year playing wing, and in fact, on many occasions, playing left wing with JT Miller and Brock
And
Besser.
I think that's the pressure on him, is that he has to make that line sing, because that line is not there to eat minutes. That line is there to look good. When you have Höglander and Garland on either side, you are expected to look good. If
That's
it doesn't,
20-goal scorers, man.
Yeah.
So,
if it doesn't, he takes Oman's spot on the fourth line, and Räty gets his day in the sun, right?
So, roster set since we joined you yesterday, Puckpedia, $479,000 of projected cap space with 23 active players. That's 13 forwards, 8 defensemen, 2 goalies. As we know, Dakota Joshua, Thatcher Demko going to start on IR, which means if it stays stationary here, and let's face it, there's very little chance of that, but as it stands in the here and now, the Canucks would be able to add a $2.2 million player without having to shed any salary on trade deadline day. Sadly, they're carrying $3.6 million in dead cap space. You have the Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout at $2.35, the Mikheyev retention at $712,000, and Tucker Poolman, who we know they retained $500,000 of his salary on the via the trade with the Colorado Avalanche.
Now,
on Sunday.
That might not sound like a lot to somebody, 2.2, but that's the space you've got. If you're acquiring a rental player and you need to offload somebody, maybe Derek Forbort's not worked out by the trade deadline, so you add his 1.5 to the 2.2, and you've got almost a $4 million player there. If you're getting somebody that has contracts years still on the books, if you're, it's not a rental player, then a roster player with a cap hit, you add the 2.2 to their cap hit, and all of a sudden you're getting a pretty big brand name player. So
many different ways you can chalk it up, including the other team retaining, or you've got an expensive player who's on long-term injured reserve, and you have even more cap space available to you. So we'll see how it shakes out. Long way to go before the trade deadline. What we know about this Canucks roster right now is it averages 6'1", it averages 194 pounds, and it is the 15th youngest, so right in the middle of the NHL in terms of youth. Nils Oman makes it over Arshdeep Bains. I think Rick Tocchet previewed this a little bit with us last week, Blake, when he talked about Oman's penalty killing prowess. Needless to say, Nils Oman can also play center ice, something Arshdeep Bains does not do, the pride of Surrey. And he requires waivers, whereas Bains can be dispatched to Abbotsford and recalled without having to pass through waivers. One other roster matter to note, Mark Friedman, the 8th defenseman sent back down today to Abbotsford. We'll see if he clears waivers and can report. That very much looks like a cap space accruing move, meaning over these next 5 days while the Vancouver Canucks are at home before they leave for Tampa on Sunday. And I saw JPat's tweet. Tampa is being hit with what officials down there are calling the storm of the century. So who knows what Tampa's going to look like on Sunday when the Canucks get there. We'll see. We'll see how things go in terms of scheduled games there in Florida this week. Anyway, so they would accrue 5 days of cap savings on what they would be paying Mark Friedman. It's not a lot of money, but every little dollar helps. Also the possibility, and Allvin mentioned this yesterday, that, Tocchet hasn't made his mind up with regards to the lineup on Wednesday. So maybe there's still a corresponding move to come with Friedman. We shall see. What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to this week?
Well, today's a very big day because there's a new fresh hop beer being released today by Yellow Dog. It's the Alpha Dog Fresh Hop Pale Ale. Strong hints of grapefruit, melon, and lime, followed by the crisp mouthfeel and hoppy bitterness. It'll have you begging for more. The Alpha Dog Fresh Hop Pale Ale.
Arshdeep Bains' bid to make this team falls just short, but it has been an incredible rise for the pride of Surrey. He has made his way from Western Hockey League leading scorer to AHL All-Star to now on the fringes of being an NHL guy. He dipped his toe last year, and you have to think that he is going to get a good number of games as this season goes along. Difficult decisions. Management and coaching staffs talk about difficult decisions. They talk about it on July 1st when they sign guys. They talk about it through the summer as they add more guys. They talk about it in training camp and preseason. And Allvin was saying the same thing yesterday when it came to Bains.
It was tough. Rick and I met him this morning. We still have a couple of days before opening night. Things could change, but again, very pleased with his season last year, the way he prepared himself for the summer. And I thought he, from Penticton to yesterday, I thought he'd just get better and better. And especially the last 2 games against full lineup of Edmonton there, I thought he carried himself really well. So we're definitely excited. It's still in the mix. Talk hasn't made up his mind for the lineup on Wednesday yet, so we'll see her with the next day of practice, and we'll go from there.
The biggest thing to take away from that is this is not the final roster. Like he doubled down on that in that quote, talking about how no decisions to be. Matt, when you look at that fourth line, does it make more sense to go Oman, Bluger, and Sherwood, or does it make more sense to go Bains, Bluger, and Sherwood? Because Bains, Bluger, and Sherwood sounds a whole lot better to me.
Well, again, the penalty killing, and we'll see how that shakes out.
I mean, Nils Oman is a fringe National Hockey League player. We can't be calling his penalty killing integral to this team.
Well, but Coach said he liked it, so I'm just going on what Coach had to say. Look, if we don't yet know what the penalty killing. I mean, we've seen preseason, but we don't yet know who they're going to commit to in terms of their penalty killing forwards. When you take a look at last year, Nils Oman ranked as their number 4 penalty killing forward on shorthanded time on ice per game, and 2 of the guys who were above him, Elias Lindholm, is now in Boston, and Dakota Joshua is unavailable on Wednesday. So it's Bluger, it's Oman, it's Pettersson, and Suter as the 4 most used penalty killing forwards who will be available from last year on Wednesday. Then you look at JT Miller, that would seem to be the core 5 who are the returnees. Then you got to ask yourself how much penalty killing are some of the new guys doing, whether that's Danton Heinen, whether that's Kiefer Sherwood, or any of the new wingers that they have brought aboard.
Bains is also a penalty killer, though. You could bring him in and do it. I mean, last year, Archie Bains had, the year before, Bains had 2 shorthanded goals in the same penalty. Something the Vancouver Canucks haven't had a lot of is the threat of a shorthanded goal. Baines could be an added piece to that PK unit as well.
DeBrusk played a minute 36 on the penalty kill last year for Boston. Heinen played a minute 14. DeBrusk was the 5th most used Bruins penalty kill forward. Heinen was 7th. So perhaps some options. We'll see. I think that's actually one area of the team that hasn't quite been fully meted out yet by this coaching staff. We shall see. I mean, I think the power play, I think we have a reasonable expectation of who will form the 2 5-man power play units. I don't necessarily think we yet know exactly how he's going to deploy his penalty killing forwards. We'll get some of our answers tomorrow when it gets going.
They're practicing power play. They're on the ice right now. They're practicing power play as we speak, in fact. And there's some interesting news on the second power play unit as Danton Heinen is taking the face-offs on the second power play unit.
They don't have a centerman there.
Yeah.
Because they're loading up Miller and Pettersson on the first power play unit, to be expected. If I'm not mistaken, the way they've practiced it recently is Höglander is the net front guy, Heinen in the bumper spot,
Garland and Sprong.
And Sprong as the 2 flanks with Philip Hronek.
Yeah. No more Carson Soucy as a dual blue line power play as we saw at times last year.
Allvin has also talked about Kiefer Sherwood because he got a good shot as a bumper spot guy. But yeah, the upshot there is you do not have, if Pius Suter is not going to play power play, then you do not have a centerman for your second power play.
And you went on a power play. It's literally just that moment of taking the face off that really is centery because you're not doing defensive coverage there. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's a skill that I think should be pretty easy for any winger to learn. Like that one doesn't,
especially with Manny Malhotra, right?
Yes.
Well, you got Manny in the organization. Look, I would argue that face-off is actually quite important because that's puck possession and the ability to continue the onslaught of the power play. Danton Heinen last year, Blake, took just 31 faceoffs and won just 12 of them. So that would be quite a departure.
Hey, you win
for
5.
The lower mainlander.
Manny Malhotra allows him to win 5 of those, then you're about 50%.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's one way to look at it. Take reps, Dan. Lots and lots of reps. Look, one of the things that I've liked about Patrik Allvin in his tenure here with the Vancouver Canucks is his consistency of message, and particularly his consistency of message, not just with guys who are towards the bottom of the roster and looking to move on up in the world or stay in the bottom of the roster. And, that was the point with Aatu yesterday, that now the hard part begins, right? Like, don't treat making an NHL team like a finish line. It's a starting block. But the consistency of message with players higher up the lineup. We'll hear from the GM on raised standards. Then I want to come back and discuss something he said a little more specifically yesterday with regards to 3 of the higher end forwards. Here's Allvin.
Well, I think, again, internally, I think the players have raised the standard. They have done that. So my expectations is always higher on the individuals. But when they respond to raise the standard of practice habits and details and how they prepare themselves, it's something that thrives for the whole organization. And nothing's going to change for us. We have a lot of things to prove here every day. And the mindset we kind of created last year, that the next game mentality, that's how we want to continue to build here. We need to find a way to get better every game. We know it's going to be harder. It's never going to be any easier. So we're going to learn, and we're going to continue to push forward.
He would later go on to sort of issue a challenge for Pettersson, Höglander, and Besser to raise their levels. And what's the tie that binds there? Well, Besser had a splendid playoffs. He was a point per game before having to bow out with that blood clotting issue. As we know, Pettersson and Höglander did not have a good playoffs. So I think he's messaging to the 2 Swedish players, hey, look, when last we saw you, you weren't on your A game. And with Besser, you may remember the comment during the course of the season, Blake, that he thought Besser could get to 50. He thought Besser took his foot off the gas a little bit.
Well, the word he used was consistency on all three of them. He said, with all three of them, we know that you can do it, but you need to do it every night. And guys like Miller and Hughes, you can point to pretty much every night and say, yep, saw him do this, had this to contribute on the night. The other three, certainly with Höglander, and needless to say, the $3 million player, less expectation of it right now, but that's still something to work on. But for the more elite players like Besser and Pettersson, yeah, still a fair comment. There's a lot of nights where you're thinking, okay, where was that guy tonight?
Yeah. But the other thing I like about it is those three players are now of a stature in the NHL as made guys. You'll remember last year we were wondering about Höglander. Would he be healthy scratched again? I think we asked on a couple of occasions, is this the last healthy scratch for Höglander? And sure enough, yes, he went on to finish the regular season strong, if not. But I think, the tactic there, and particularly with Pettersson, because we've heard Tocchet say a lot of the same things, is we are going to continue to challenge these players publicly. Like we hear Pettersson say that he's his own worst critic. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, guess what? You've got the new $11.6 million contract. That comes with an even greater expectation, greater pressure. So, get used to it, because those are the stakes now. That's the reality you're living in as one of the highest paid players in the National Hockey League and expected to perform.
I still think, though, Matt,
accordingly.
He's made his point now to this point. I think going forward, Patrik Allvin does have to let out the leash now on Elias Pettersson in particular, because we know the personality of Elias Pettersson, and see how his start goes.
Yeah.
And not after 3 games,
right,
with 1 point in 3 games going, where's Elias? We need him to be better.
Well, I'll say 2 things. Number one, I don't think we're going to hear from Allvin for some time now. Typically, the GM does most of his talking before the season, eve of season opener, and then, goes quiet.
1 or 2 other moments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Lets the head coach do the talking until some, determined time later in the year. Maybe there's a big transaction or trade or whatever. GM's meeting, something like that. They speak again.
But he should probably have one appearance where he doesn't mention this.
Yeah, no, but here's the other thing, Blake. Besser and Pettersson are sensitive sorts. One of the things that we had heard about both players is that they did not particularly take well to Travis Green riding them pretty hard, particularly in video sessions in front of the team. And I think what this management group is saying, because I think this management group, gives fewer Fs, if you will. I mean, they've climbed the mountaintop. I think they understand that if you're going to win a Stanley Cup championship, that, feelings are secondary. And I think what Rick Tocchet and Patrik Allvin and Jim Rutherford as well all understand is, look, you have to grow out of that. We understand that you were the best players on your team all the way up through minor hockey, in Besser's case, collegiate hockey, and Elias's case, professional hockey in Sweden. We understand that, for a lot of your hockey playing life, you could do very little wrong. You walked on water, all of those things. Well, guess what? If you want to be championship pillars, that is yet another level. You're going to have to ignore the noise, ignore some of the criticism, whatnot, put your head down and play, which gets back to consistency. So I think we've seen this messaging for the club for a couple of years now, and it is a tougher love than what they had previously been exposed to, at least in the public sphere, because Travis would be difficult on them in practice and video sessions, but he used to say it all the time, Blake, he very rarely, if ever, went after one of those guys in the public forum, because he knew they were his meal ticket. He was a young coach. They weren't a very good team. And the last thing he wanted to do was lose them. So I felt like he played to their sensitivities publicly, not so behind closed doors, whereas these guys are saying, no, it's out in the open. We're having the honest conversation. We know we are working in a smart hockey market with people who know the game and understand that Elias did not have a great stretch of games in the postseason last year. And, we're going to be upfront about that as opposed to play games.
But you said it. You said it a lot. I think you can still message this behind closed doors and talk to Elias Pettersson 1v1 all you want throughout the entire season. But publicly, you said your bit on this. I think it's time to let the sleeping dogs lie here and let the players perform for 20 to 40 games.
I would agree.
And see what they've got.
Nils Höglander, one of the three that he mentioned about consistency. First time we've heard from Allvin after signing the rugged Swedish winger to a 3-year, $9 million extension, paying him $3 million per season. Here's the general manager on the Höglander extension and the example that he
I think
players.
Nils have earned it. Going back 2 years ago when I was sitting in my office with him and making the hard decision for him going down to Abbotsford and kind of resetting his game and learning how to play the right way. He wasn't happy about it, but he accepted it and he trusted the organization, and he got better ever since. And the way he carried himself, I think it's important for all our young players to see the commitment to his fitness level and the way he plays and the way he practices every day. And he's still young, and we believe that there is more to come in his game.
Talkett often talked about fitness level. Allvin often talked about practice habits, and the message rang loudly and clearly with Nils Höglander in fashioning that 24-goal season last year and getting this contract extension from the Vancouver Canucks. Just in case anybody was unclear, it is a contract extension for Höglander that kicks in next season. So he's got this season and he's got 3 more where he's under contract with the Canucks. And even at the end of this contract extension, he is still, Blake, simply an RFA with arb rights. So he is club controlled for 5 more years. And if the Vancouver Canucks see fit, just 23 years old. I think we sometimes lose sight of that with Nils Höglander because he was here at such a young age.
Surprised from his depth, from the depths of his draft ranking to compete for a job at such a young age. But you also have to think, because it is an extension after this year, Matt, what does $3 million on the cap feel like in that final year? I mean, my goodness, that's going to be
a steal if he continues to keep on keeping on.
That's going to feel like 1.8 million right now. If they're going to be doing these $5 million jumps on the salary cap here on the reg, God, in 3 more years from now, when he's entering the final year of that deal, that's going to feel like a borderline ELC contract. So it's a fabulous bit of work.
And he is one of 6 players under contract for that season 27-28 with the Canucks: Pettersson, Miller, DeBrusk, Joshua, Hronek being the others. So you take a look at the company he's keeping there. That's a lot of the frontline players for the Canucks. He plays at just 1.1 million this year, so he continues to be excellent bang for the buck. I say he's 23, but he'll be 24 in December.
Michael on the YouTube, I thought he's a UFA at the end. Same situation as DeBrusk. No, he is a RFA ARB eligible.
Yeah, I'm showing I'm showing RFA on that. So
DeBrusk is much older, of course. Was that the comparison too? DeBrusk is way older, so that's why the difference in years accrued. Very different situations.
Oh, wait. Oh, okay. Odd. Puckpedia has him as UFA, but are eligible. So,
okay. Somebody's right. Somebody's wrong.
Yes, we will sort that actually for tomorrow. Put it on E's and O's for tomorrow. All right. I want to re-engage you on something that I was mentioning. I think it was last week, maybe the week before. We have reached the end of camp, preseason, roster setting. All that's left is lineup before tomorrow's regular season opener. And as we know, it was not a very good start. We learned that Thatcher Demko had this odd muscle injury in the back of the knee and wouldn't be ready. We learned that Dakota Joshua was diagnosed with testicular cancer, had a corrective procedure, and was on the mend and would be unavailable. So immediately, your Vezina finalist goaltender and your big power forward at a career year, and that you found a way to re-sign to a good team-friendly contract, we think, prior to him testing free agency. Since then, Blake, things have gone tickety-boo for this team. You solved the crease problem by signing Kevin Lankinen.
Mm-hmm.
You watched your first-round pick from a couple of years back, your top prospect, have a very good training camp in Jonathan Lekramacky, right? And preseason. Didn't make the team, but there was very little expectation he would make the team. Could be an option for later this year, and that could be very important. You watched a young 21-year-old centerman make the roster. Again, maybe he hasn't made the lineup, but Aatu Räty had a sensational camp. He was the star of it preseason. You watched another young player. Like, when was the last time the Canucks had such a push from below at one position group, Blake? To think that Räty, Baines, and even Lekramacky were really challenging some of these veterans on one-way contracts. I think you got to feel very optimistic about the way things have gone for this camp. We'll see if they can carry it into the.
Did you mention finding a taker for the Pullman contract?
And of course, finding a taker for the Pullman contract and getting yourself some cap space.
That wasn't a guarantee, but they were able to find a dance partner there.
So a lot of things have gone well here for the Canucks. We know they had that very strong start to last season. I don't necessarily think that's a need to do to make the playoffs this year. It would certainly be a nice to do. I think if you get the goaltending, and Lankinen looked darn good in preseason, and she loves as well, that I think you feel really good about your start to the season. Meanwhile, Allvin confirming that Demko and Joshua have been skating in the mornings with Jason Krog. He notes they're not going to rush Thatcher because that's important to his long-term health, which everybody understands. I think the question will be, how much is Thatcher pushing at some point to go play? Because once the games start tomorrow, there's absolutely a fear of loss with fear of missing out with injured players, right? Like they want to get back in there. Then, of course, if you don't get off to the good start, that might further wet Thatcher's beak in terms of his return to play.
Yeah, I mean, there's every reason to believe the Canucks have put themselves, hey, you're not in control of everything, and nobody's going to bat 1,000 in terms of news tidbits throughout the preseason and training camp. People are going to get dinged. There's going to be injuries, this, that, the other. But this is a pretty best foot forward scenario here for the Vancouver Canucks. Everything that has gone wrong has been addressed to a degree. Again, you don't lose Thatcher Demko and just plug in a new Vezina Trophy caliber goalie, but they've addressed it to a satisfactory level from, I think, almost everybody. Like, I haven't heard anybody say, no, that was a crappy job getting Lankinen to fill in. Like, nobody, like, it's been widely accepted as, hey, when your Vezina caliber goalie goes down, making a deal like this, no, that's just a smart move. So they've done everything they can to ensure that they don't have a bad start. At this point, Matt, it is now squarely on the players and the coaching staff. But to a lesser degree, I mean, the coaches, this is a system that the majority of these players know how to play now at this point. There's been tweaks for this year, but, the coaches are a part of the equation. But I'm going to put this on the players here now. It's on them. Go out and have the start.
Unquestionably. I mean, the roster is very good. The coaching was exceptional last year, and you're quite right. The players got a taste of what the Stanley Cup playoffs is like, and now it is on them to keep on keeping on and deliver the fantastic play, the excitement, and everything that we were able to experience and enjoy last season. And God knows it was necessary, because it had been many long, dark years here in Vancouver.
Like I
when
think
it came to NHL hockey and the performance of the Canucks on and off the ice.
Our question infers, the last time we saw them, are the Canucks better now than they were at the end of last season? I think they're definitely better than they were at the beginning of last season.
Well, yeah, I mean, no Lindholm, no Zadorov. It was a
Yeah, the things that put them over the top at the end were not there.
No,
So
I mean, you had a 4 or 5 defenseman and again a top 2 centerman in season without giving anything up from your roster. I mean, it was only the Beauvillier moving the Beauvillier, who's a bottom 6 winger who was not working out here. So yes, it was.
So they're building from higher ground already.
Yep,
and accruing cap space. Dare to dream. So they put themselves in a good spot.
Yep. Allvin also addressed the player acquired from the Colorado Avalanche, defenseman Erik Brannstrom, when he spoke yesterday. Let's hear from the GM because this was a guy that they had kicked tires on previously.
We talked about Brannstrom within our staff with his ability to move pucks and power play option. We didn't feel that, I think that two things. I think the competition we had and the makeup of our roster at that time, we felt there wasn't really a fit there, but definitely a guy that our pro scouts seeing as an option for us. That he cleared waivers here means we can continue to work with him and hopefully being a depth option and letting some of the younger players grow their game more in Abbotsford.
Well, yeah, and as we talked about yesterday, the Canucks did not have this profile of defenseman outside of Quinn Hughes, and needless to say that Hughes is several notches above Brannstrom in terms of aptitude, but a lefty skating, puck transporting defenseman. If Hughes were to go down, you drop this guy in, you get a similar profile, and that helps other defensemen, other players on the ice in terms of their expectation, in terms of fit chemistry.
I think Kirill Kudryavtsev is this player, but I don't think they want to give him. I don't think they want to lean on Kirill Kudryavtsev at this stage in his career. Too young for that yet. Next year, can Kirill Kudryavtsev be that player? Yeah, potentially. But this year's
long way to go there. Let's see Kudryavtsev play pro games because we haven't seen him do that coming out of the OHL. But I hear what you're saying long term, but I don't think Kirill Kudryavtsev, unless he completely astonishes everybody, is an option for recall this season. So it's prediction season. We went through a bunch of these last week. We're not going to be exhaustive, comprehensive, and list everybody's predictions, and we'll do some tomorrow ourselves. But I did note that Jay Fresh Hockey, his prediction has the Canucks at 110 points, tied for the second most in the league with the Dallas Stars, behind only the Edmonton Oilers. He also asked fans to do projections, and the fans had the Canucks at 101 points, ninth best in the NHL, 9 behind Edmonton for second place.
Which covers sort of the spectrum of where we would have put them, right?
Yep.
People have them. I think that is about right. 101 to 110 is the spectrum. We informally put our over-under at 105 points on the air. So all that tracks.
Well, that's the Bet 360. Yeah, that was the number.
And is that officially the over-under? I mean, we came up with that long before we even looked it up. 105 points just kind of feels right for them to be shooting for.
Odds maker Blake Price over here, line maker.
Right. Now, the other fun one, though, rather than just what do you feel, what is the EA Sports predictor? Because the EA Sports one is the player cards, the player values are a rolling score. Each of the players goes in with a score that they have had compiled over the years. And then they put them all on the same roster together, and the computer plays out the entire season. So I've always been intrigued by what their computer says. They have them winning the Pacific Division again, Matt.
Yeah, I saw that.
They didn't put a point total there, but they've got them ahead of the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
The fun part is, too, they've got them meeting again in the second round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
As well, Matt.
Well, We could be looking at Edmonton, Vancouver for a good number of years in the playoffs, everybody. I think back to that 3 years in a row with the Chicago Blackhawks and wonder whether Canucks Oilers can even exceed that in terms of number of consecutive years meeting in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
They do have them getting past the Canucks again.
Yeah. While we're at it, and I'm not doing this for cheap points with the audience and the team and city they most like to hate. But are you like me? You're looking at all these predictions on the Leafs and winning the division and like 105 points or 100. I've seen them even higher than that, and just scratching your head, going, I just don't see it. So much. The defense is old now. Love West Vancouver's Morgan Riley. He's 30 years old now. He's had some injuries. Tanev is 34. You're asking him to do it again. Ekman Larson had a nice bounce back season. He's 33 with tons of miles. McCabe is 30. The goaltending Woll and Stolars. Like, do you really?
Okay, totally.
Like, I look at the first six forwards and I go, yeah, they're going to score some goals there. Of that, there's no doubt. But I don't see it in terms of depth.
Reverse engineer it though. Who's better than them? It's easy to say Florida, but how much of a hangover do they have?
No, I know people are banking on a Florida hangover, but I think Florida's better than them. And frankly, I think that division, the Atlantic, could be all sorts of topsy-turvy. Like, it would not surprise me if Tampa and Boston missed and if Buffalo and Ottawa made.
There's a lot of old
It would not
there.
surprise me if Montreal, and sadly for Montreal with no Line A and no Reinbacker, that might have very much hurt their chances. Not to mention the fact that I wonder if 5 teams could come out of the Metropolitan division. I, like everybody else, I think Jersey's going to be very good this year and bounce back. I think the Rangers are established there. I think Carolina's established there. Do you wonder whether Pittsburgh has another hurrah left with Sidney and Malkin? I look at Washington, and I think they could be competitive. So,
outside of New Jersey, is there a good young team there? Like, it feels like everything in the East feels old to me.
Yeah, well, Buffalo with all the young forwards.
No, but I mean of the good teams. Of the good teams.
Okay, of the good teams.
Like, is anybody surfing, and New Jersey missed the playoffs because of a variety of reasons, but only New Jersey feels like a young core that's ready to win now. Okay. Everybody else just feels old.
One other thing I'll say, I think Vegas is going to bounce back this year. Last year, as we know, played all sorts of LTR hijinks, just made the playoffs, was eliminated in the first round. I think Vegas will, it pains me to say it, but I think Vegas
are you cheering it on, or
be more robust. No.
Okay.
They're new here.
Their defense is going to be interesting to watch.
Vegas?
Yeah.
Oh, their defense is exceptional.
Well, it's getting older too, though.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like McNabb and Pietrangelo are old.
Yep.
Hannafin and Theodore, what do they have left?
We'll see. I mean, Hannafin with a full season to get acclimatized, I think, will be better than what we saw last year when it all ended.
But again, like a lot of teams, a good regular season team is not necessarily a good playoff team. Like, I think the Leafs could be good, but I would not pick them in the playoffs. And I think there's a lot of teams that fit that bill where can they have regular season success? Sure. Yeah. What do they look like in the playoffs?
Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta Bar. YVR, hockey season around the corner. Matter of fact, you got games of consequence today, but even before things get going there, you got baseball, you got football, you got soccer. And of course, once hockey season does get going, Greta, a great spot for all games home and away. We will be there for the first Canucks Army viewing party October 19th. Doors open at 4 p.m. puck drop. Get your tickets, nationgear.ca. Your minutes from the arena or stadium. Great place to pregame, postgame. They got the street food menu. And, of course, that arcade. Weekly drink specials, 50 West Cordova. Greta, the place to be. Greta Bar, let the games begin. Cam Robinson of Elite Prospects going to join us here, and he adds insight into why Brannstrom hasn't made it as a 15th overall first-round pick, not to mention some news, at least that he's hearing, on Thatcher Demko. John Shannon will join us as well. We'll talk a little bit more around the NHL with John, who still, and he told us this in the summer, but he likes this Canucks team better than last year, and he's very bullish on Elias Pettersson.
Late news from the Canucks practice, by the way. Lankinen's pads are in, so he will not be
in Nashville
colors if and when he takes the crease.
Yeah, and Tocchet has foreshadowed that it will be She Loves tomorrow. We all think it'll be She Loves, but hey, it could be Lankinen as soon as Friday against Philadelphia at Rogers Arena. Let's get to our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres & Price. I'm going to stay on the Canucks here.
Yep.
And look forward to tomorrow's game with a player prop. Quinn Hughes says his goal is 20 goals this year. Going to shoot the puck more often. We know how he runs a power play. Plus, he's got these new, better wingers to hit with outlet passes. I think that's something we haven't really talked about a whole lot. But Quinn in transition, we know they're trying to be more of a transition game, but Quinn in transition, delivering these passes to wingers who are better equipped to score than last year's group. We know DeBrusk is there. Sherwood's got a good shot. Sprong's got a good shot. So I'm going 2 points for Hughes tomorrow against Calgary in the opener. It pays at plus 215.
I'm going to go with a goal scorer. And lately it just feels like in the last handful of years, going all the way back to Elias Pettersson's opening game, it seems like there's been storybook sort of nights for new players, not going as far back as Louis Eriksson, clearly. But for the most part, there's been positive stories and debuts. I think Jake DeBrusk gets a goal. And it's plus 240 for DeBrusk to get that one. He's going to get every opportunity in the man advantage too, remember?
For sure. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Cam Robinson coming up next.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey setup as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Sekeres & Price from the Historic Wall Center. This next interview, powered by Square. If you run a restaurant, you're too busy for this ad. You're thinking about how to get more orders flowing and new locations opening. You need to get more customers, keep them coming back. So really, you're already thinking about Square, because Square Restaurant Tech helps more than 400,000 restaurants do all those things and more. So when you're thinking about your restaurant, think bigger and think Square. Go to squareup.com/ca/campaign/big INRST to see why Square is big in restaurants.
I used it last night. I was like, hey,
boy,
there's Square.
Cam Robinson is the content director for Elite Prospects. He's joining us Tuesdays this year. And Cam, the big news yesterday from Darren Dreger that Dakota Joshua, Thatcher Demko, it looks like they're going to have to play most of, if not the entirety of the month of October without those two fellas. How do you think they'll maintain? And what are you hearing on those two guys?
So it sounds like I heard that 3 to 4 weeks there for both. Joshua, I think is probably, that's a fair timeline. He's skating. I think, it's obviously it's been a difficult couple months, as Allvin said in his press conference yesterday for Joshua, but he's coming along and he's skating. And but with Demko, I did do some poking around, and everybody's kind of they're guessing a little bit here still. But I did have a couple people tell me that 3 to 4 weeks might be optimistic for Thatcher, that there's a world where it's 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe we don't see him until December. Allvin is saying all the right things, that he's very confident in Silovs, and he's a big game goaltender, and he's proven that. And Lankinen's come in and he's pushed them, and he's been, a good person in that room for them. So they feel okay running those two out there. But I mean, for Canucks fans, is that this is a playoff team, and they should be able to survive without Demko, even if it is until December. but you certainly want him ready to go and rolling in the new year and pushing down the stretch, right?
Well, it sounds like this is an injury too, where it's gonna improve slowly, and there's gonna be a point where you could theoretically play on it and probably not cause any further damage, but you might not be entirely comfortable. And that's where, if Lankinen and Seelovs are doing their job, maybe you keep kicking the can down the road and just trying to get him even more comfortable and postponing any sort of return. So, like, how much does the performance of Seelovs and Lankinen, affect ultimately the return of Demko? I would guess, based on what we're hearing about this injury, that they are woven together just a little bit, because it doesn't sound like there's a cure for this injury anyway.
Exactly, right. It's going to be one of these things that if the team is doing well and they're not really struggling, they probably won't push him to come back sooner than he's really feeling comfortable to. But like you said, it's just such a unique situation where it's like there's no surgery, there's no real rehab for it at this point. It's that he just needs to get used to dealing with it as it is and pushing through. And so for some people to hear that, they might think like, oh, well, players play through pain all the time, just go out there and play. But when it's your starting netminder and you want him to be good in April and May and maybe June, if you're lucky, is that, yeah, absolutely right. If the team is playing well, the goaltenders, even if it's a platoon situation, if you're riding the hot hand and then you slip on the other and it's going well, then why not just keep, and even when Demko's healthy, keeping all three on the roster isn't the end of the world, right?
They're making it work now.
Yeah. Cam, Aatu Räty has made the team. Your thoughts on this left field bid that makes good, at least for opening night?
I love it. And I will eat crow that I said, you guys asked me a few weeks ago that, of these young guys who legitimately has a chance. And I said at the time that I think Lekiramäki, just because of his unique skill set, that he would be the front runner for that regard. But, being so young and so inexperienced in North American pro hockey, that it makes a lot of sense to put him down. Where Räty, he has just kicked the door down and he kept stomping on it on the way. And he's managed to lock himself up an opening night bid on the roster here. So I think it's great for him. I think it speaks to his competitive nature and how he improved the foot speed over the summer. And like we talked about last week too, he's still young. There's still a lot of offensive upside that he could grow into. Allvin in that press conference yesterday, he was pretty clear though that, that rosters for set today or Monday there. And then we'll see how things go, right? As Joshua comes back in, as Suter's, healthy, they're going to be working that cap situation like crazy, right? Trying to stay out of LTIR and accrue as much space as they can. So, will he be going down on off days? Like it's probably going to be a lot of up and downs for him this year if he does manage to stay. But I mean, it's great to see it. And I think for Canucks fans to have a young guy, a 21-year-old who can, viably step in as a third line center with that upside it's really great for a team that's in their competitive window.
Let me just say this, buddy. First of all, good on you for owning it. The more of these hits you do weekly, and certainly when you are in a daily format, as Blake and I have been for nearly 13 years now,
a lot of takes get ripe.
Crow becomes a staple of your diet. You eat as much crow as you eat chicken or beef. Mm-hmm. Höglander.
Can't always be right.
Höglander, the 3-year, $3 million extension. What were your thoughts there?
I like it. It's a player friendly deal in the sense that you're betting on the player and he's not so much betting on himself. I think that, 24 goals last year, obviously, the shooting percentage was through the moon, especially at 5-on-5, which is basically all he played. Is that you're betting that he takes another step forward, which I think is a fair bet. He's taken several steps in just the last year or so. And so I don't expect him to shoot 20+% again, but I think that can be mitigated by upping his volume, right? And becoming that, that kind of torpedo again that we saw when he first stepped into the league and what he was in the SHL for Rögle too. He can be a menace on the forecheck. But if he went out and scored 20, 25 goals this year, like what's his arbitration case going to look like, right? Like he would have had himself a really strong case to make even more money on a shorter term deal. Now, this one is especially team friendly or player friendly because he can also just walk to free agency at 27, right? So for him, it's money in the bank. He's got $9 million, and then maybe he does really, really well, and he'll get a big contract next, or he walks himself to free agency and he can pick his spot. So really great for him. But I also think it just kind of proves the the trust and the belief that the organization has in him, that they think that they're going to get at least that much value over the next 3 years. And if he does it, if he proves it, then they'll take care of him, right? Just like Allvin said about Besser, go out and do it again, and we'll take care of you. And I'm sure the same was said to Hoglander too.
I'm betting Garland plays in the opener, but there is the potential where with no Joshua, no Suter, no Garland, that this is maybe as good an opportunity as Hoglander gets to get some elevated minutes and power play minutes and all that sort of stuff. It's on a platter for him to have a good start to the season and prove that the 24 is not a fluke, that the shooting percentage is not a fluke. And the way you can obviously mitigate the shooting percentage going down is by shot volume. And if you're out there in more offensive opportunities, he can boost that shot volume.
Exactly, right? Like he should be a power play player too, right? Like he has the type of skills that he's always been a power play player coming up as well. Like he works well in the net front, he worked well in the bumper spot, especially in the SHL. And so, yeah, getting those early reps and to see if he can get himself off to a hot start too with that contract in his back pocket could really, add to that confidence level. He could have another breakout season, and he doesn't need to shoot 20% to do it. And it's still very possible, especially if he can kick off one of those Heinen or Sprong on one of those top six wings. If he can get himself next to Pettersson at 5-on-5 too, that'll be really beneficial, especially if he can see himself a minute and a half of power play time too. Okay, so we do have to ask you this. Brannstrom got some lip service from the GM yesterday. Sort of talked about what we have seen in Erik Brannstrom in years gone by. I don't know that we've seen a July 1st signee get traded in the preseason without ever donning the jersey of the new team. Did you hear anything about his training camp in preseason? I mean, I got people in my mentions talking about how bad it was, but it can only be so bad. It's preseason. What do you think Erik Brannstrom's got left? He's 25. I mean, he's not like he's journeyman status just yet, is he? He's not ancient, he's not decrepit, but it has been a tough go. And I'll say, since we're serving up Crow, I loved him as a draft eligible. I thought he was going to be a hell of a player. I wanted Vancouver to draft him. Like I was like, this kid's going to be a player. He moves the puck so well, skates well, great offensive instincts, and it just hasn't come together. And I mean, Ottawa believed it too, right? Like that was a big part of the Mark Stone trade. They thought that they were getting themselves a serious player. Like that year, Vegas, they went Suzuki, Glass, and Brannstrom in that first round. We're like, wow, the Golden Knights are off to a red hot start. And only one of them worked out, and they're not in Vegas. So none of their first round picks are, I guess, either. But I mean, at this point, he's an interesting player still because he still can move the puck, right? He got 20 points in the NHL last year, the year before. He hangs around that level. He can move the puck with his feet. He can move the puck with a pass. He can be a second power play option. But he's one of these guys that, where does he fit on this club other than depth, right? Is if there's an injury on the left side, yeah, he can come up and he can move the puck and he can play some sheltered minutes and it'll be fine. But I just don't see him really, unless he takes some significant strides, really pushing to be a full-time regular in this organization. So I'm sure they would much rather have a guy that they can lock down an 8th spot, right? And then just be that heavy, hard guy as a 7-8.
What do you think evaluators got wrong with Brannstrom at the draft, Cam? Like what didn't fire with Brannstrom that people thought would?
So 2 things is that when these offensive guys are coming up, you are betting that they're going to round out the rest of their game, that through coaching, maturity, experience, is that they are going to become at least average at defense and switching in coverage and all those types of things. And then you're also betting that their offensive skills continue to develop and that they, a player who looks like he might have elite offensive skills is that it will continue to trend in that direction and he'll have elite offensive skills in the NHL level. And for Brannstrom, neither of those things happen. So he has good offensive skills, which were great when he was a 17, 18-year-old, and they just haven't really expanded on that. And then the defensive side of things, the maturity in his defensive game and in his awareness off puck didn't really come as well. It took a really long time for him to get to be a point where he could even play like regular NHL minutes without being super sheltered. And then it didn't really, that bubble just kind of burst.
If they determine the Forbort and Desharnais are just not moving their feet well enough back there as a third pair, if that indeed is the third pair on the regular, are Juleson and Friedman enough of an upgrade in foot speed that fits the bill though? Or is Brannstrom the answer there if they want to get a little bit more fleet of foot and have a better first pass?
Better first pass. Yeah. You know, Brannstrom for sure. Better first pass. But I honestly, I don't love all that you mix and match those 4 any way you want. I don't love it.
Yeah.
You know, or
It's
5,
none of it's
however you want to
great.
look at it. You know, like none of them is what I would want to wheeling out there as a regular third pair. So I think staying out of LTIR, moving that Pullman contract and recruiting that cap space is got to be designed to get a right shot defenseman. And we'll talk about it every week. I think they need another one. I think they need a second pair level one that they can push everybody down the lineup. And then, because like the depth on the farm is great. They've got loads of, especially on the left side, loads of defensemen that they can pull up. But I just don't see any of them being enough to move the needle. And you really need somebody on that right side.
Yep. And that is something we will track over the course of this season, and we'll track it on Tuesdays with you, Cam Robinson. Enjoy that crow. It turns to turkey though later in the week, right? We're gobble turkey week, so we'll have a feast for you come next Tuesday.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, boys.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center. Our next guest is the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the most famous man from Oliver, British Columbia, Mr. John Shannon. How are you?
I was thinking about that the other day. I think there's some more famous people from Oliver. I'm not sure who they are, but you know,
we're open for nominations.
I am so angry right now. I keep getting pictures from friends who are on the 3rd hole at Fairview Mountain saying it's beautiful.
Yeah.
You know, and I just don't understand that. I mean, because I can't play Fairview Mountain these days.
Yeah. No.
Fall is a good time to be there.
Yeah.
Fall. It's awful.
You know what else happens?
Nothing better than September and October in the Okanagan. Trust me.
And you know what else happens in the fall, John, is it weeds out the unserious golfers. So you get the tee times a little bit more readily and the pace of play moves a little bit better. So it's a fantastic time of year here for golf, but also hockey. I know you're fond of drop the puck. Here we will do it tonight across 3 venues. And then, of course, tomorrow for the Vancouver Canucks. John, you told us when we spoke to you a couple of weeks ago, no step back. This is a Vancouver Canucks team you're very bullish on. Mm-hmm. You think they're better on paper as we sit here and now than the team that finished last year against Edmonton?
Do we put an asterisk beside Thatcher Demko, or what do we do?
Well, here's the thing. He didn't actually finish last season.
That's
he
true.
Was on
so it is as they ended.
But you can treat Demko's availability or lack thereof however you see fit, sir.
So I do like the team better this year than I did the end of season last year. I love the Jake DeBrusk acquisition. I think that Elias Pettersson will be better. I think that the learning curve that some of those young guys had to go through when they played in the playoffs is going to be valuable. I do suspect that Demko, and I listened to Darren yesterday, I do think that, Demko will be back hopefully before Christmas. And Dakota Joshua, once he's through his rehabilitation, will be a really valuable resource. So I like this hockey club. I like their depth. I love the big defense. So, I mean, I think that they're in a really good spot right now. Yeah.
We're going to fact check you here or correct you, and you can spread this to all the national guys there. If you're going to say Elias Pettersson going forward,
I know.
You're going to confuse everybody because that's the defensive prospect now.
Well, I guess D Pettersson versus E Pettersson. Is that what we should do?
It's Elias.
That'll work.
Elias versus Elias. Yeah. It's very confusing.
Although our Swedish friends are saying, "Are you really going to do that?" Like that's not right either. But
exactly.
Nevertheless,
I'm gonna. How about we just say number 40?
That's
yeah,
right. There we go.
exactly. 40.
Like football guys.
Mhm.
Yeah. 40
Yeah.
was good today. Yes.
Hey,
Okay, I hate nicknames. I really do. I just absolutely abhor nicknames. But if I have to call him EP40, I will call him EP40. How's that?
There
Yeah.
you go. Yeah.
What kind of season do you think he's sitting on?
I think it's a 100-point season. I really do. And the question becomes: are we going to see more of the goal scorer Pettersson versus the playmaker Pettersson? And my gut tells me that I think we're going to see more of the playmaker. I think there's enough goal scoring on this roster that I think that he can now use those great hands to set other people up. And so my thinking is 100 points. And if you want numbers, how about 35-65?
What do you make of Patrik Allvin going back to it? Seems like every time there's a general Patrik Allvin availability, when he's talking about Pettersson, there's always a little challenge there. There's always a little bit of a poke. He's not tearing the player down, but there's always a little bit of a challenge of, what they expect. Is that too much, or do you think the player will respond to that sort of challenge?
He better. And this is where I'm on Patrick's side. They gave him a lot of money. He's now in that echelon of being one of the highest paid players in the National Hockey League, and he better bloody well show up. I mean, that's maybe Patrick should say that.
That's effectively what he is.
And he basically, in many ways, has Blake.
Yeah, for sure.
He said, show up. I think there's still some disappointment about where he was in the playoffs. You can argue whether the injury was one thing or how severe the injury was. But when you put your name on a contract for that type of money, you better perform. And I think that this is where the demands of this management team is putting Pettersson right now. And that's my expectation of him as well.
Speaking of this management team, how about another rabbit out of the hat, John? They're able to move the Pullman contract. They get a depth defenseman in Erik Brannstrom, and it allows them to start the season outside of LTIR. A word or two on the third year in a row where Allvin has been able to do something right at the death before rosters are set.
Yeah, for the price of a fourth rounder, I guess is not bad. At the same time, what does Patrick owe Chris McFarland now? I mean, that's what as you guys know, that club of 32 managers, there is some quid pro quo all the time. I'll look after you this time if you look after me next time. I do wonder at a certain point that if Chris needs some help, can Patrick help Chris? And so that to me is one of the fascinations of all this, when these types of things do occur. I mean, when I read the release in Pullman, and I went, oh man, that is, even though they're carrying a little bit of Pullman's salary, that is really, really well done in a very tough situation. And I mean, almost every Canadian team is probably in that point of trying to find a way to stay out of long-term injury reserve and trying to make sure that they're not compromising everything that they have in their prospect pool.
And the exception, of course, is the Edmonton Oilers, who spent the better part of yesterday jockeying to get Evander Kane onto LTIR. Vancouver's Evander Kane, he's going to miss a significant portion of the season. They also lost a player at one point, a pretty good prospect, on waivers. Now, we know they did some work in the offseason on the wing, John, in adding Jeff Skinner and Victor Arvidsson, but it seemed, and of course, Brown, the defenseman they waived, it seemed a disjointed offseason in Edmonton based on the fact there were two general managers at two different times in the summer. Do you think that comes back to haunt them? And how do you think the Oilers are going to maintain depth-wise here as a cap-tight LTIR team, missing a guy like Evander Kane?
Well, I do think they're going to miss Evander Kane at a certain point. He was irascible on the ice when he was healthy. He was a valuable player through some of their playoff runs when he was healthy. He is more valuable to them right now on LTIR. That's a reality of the National Hockey League in 2024. Stan Bowman was put in got his chance to come back, wasn't there on the 1st of July. So Jeff Jackson did all the legwork. But now Stan Bowman has a different philosophy. And I'm not suggesting it's 180-degree different philosophy, but it's at least 15% different. And so I think we're seeing that now. We're seeing Bowman's imprints on the Oilers. And it will be, I think it will be until Christmas time that we see even more of that, where Stan feels comfortable in what he's doing. I think he and Jeff work well together. They understand each other very well. But Stan Bowman is now that day-to-day guy. It's funny. It's a different relationship in Edmonton between Bowman and Jackson than it is between Allvin and Rutherford. It's almost juxtaposition when you think the experience Bowman has versus Jackson's inexperience as a president. And then you have Rutherford as the president with all the experience, and Allvin now in year number 4, I guess, in his job. So to me, I just think this is a growing pain for a team that's, by the way, the oldest team in the National Hockey League. And as long as you can maintain McDavid, Draisaitl, and a few of their young guys, Bouchard on defense, Ekholm, Nurse, Stuart Skinner in a goal, you're going to be fine as they whittle their way through the first half of the season.
Both teams are fine-tuning, but the fact you've got new management in Edmonton, is their fine-tuning going to mean maybe a bit more of a wander through the woods in the middle part of the season? What I'm saying is the division still up for grabs? Does that even matter? Is that a worthwhile question to ask, given both teams, will still be able to host be home ice advantage in the first round of the playoffs? Do we care who wins the Pacific?
Well, no, I don't think we do. Who won the Pacific last year?
Yeah, the team that lost the playoff series.
Yeah. So, and did home ice mean anything?
Yeah, not much in that one.
No, and I think you have to throw Vegas into that mix too. So those 3 teams are probably going to vie for the top 3 positions. The question for me now is in the Pacific are you only going to see 3 teams coming out of the division? Maybe you see 5 from the Central. That's a reality that could happen in the Western Conference.
The EA simulation is Seattle getting in for whatever that's worth, if you think they've got a surprise in them.
Well, I looked at the Kraken roster yesterday, and I think it's improved. It really has. And then I got thinking, is it because I think that there are recognizable names now? Like, you go through the roster, and there's really some big names on that team when you think of Montour and Stevenson being added. Adam Larson on defense re-signed in Seattle. But can they, and Dan Bilesman's got a tough job. I don't see Seattle being that 4th team at this point. But you know what, they are certainly going to be better than they were in the second half last season.
For me, Seattle pivots on 2 things. Number 1, goaltending, because last year they had all sorts of troubles there until Joey Decord came in and settled it down a little bit. I'm not sure he's the answer, but co-started with Grubauer. And then secondly, how much improvement do you get from your young players? Like, Beniers was 37 points last year in 77 games. Wrights made the team. Okay, is he ready to pop as a top 5 pick? And then Riker Evans, the defenseman who they had high hopes for last year, played half the season and did okay, but if he takes the next steps. So if you've got 2 centermen and the defenseman who take significant steps forward this year, then I like Seattle's depth. And if they get the goaltending, I think they could be a real dark horse, but any of those things fall apart, and I'm with you guys. I'm not sure the Kraken.
Well, and let's face it, since the team entered the National Hockey League, and I'm a huge Ron Francis fan, I think that if you got a couple of beers in him and a quiet night in Yaletown, he might regret the Grubauer contract. because
for sure.
that to me, I mean, Grubauer was supposed to answer a lot of questions from the first year. And I look at their goaltending, and again, I mean, I recognize the name. I think he should be better than he is, and he isn't. And I think that's a real challenge in Seattle.
Goaltending's a hell of a drug. You need it.
And then it becomes a question, if you're not on Seattle, do you have anybody in the Pacific Division that you fancy? I don't know. It'd be, I think, difficult to make a case for Anaheim.
Los Angeles.
Well, where are you on LA, John? Because I'm actually not too fussy about LA anymore. I'm not sure at one point there several years ago, it looked like they had so many young assets, so much upcoming talent that it was hard to go wrong. I have not loved the way that Rob Blake and company have managed that roster over the last few years.
No, but there are a couple of young guys on that team that are pretty good. They are going to miss Drew Doughty, let's face it, for, I would guess, until Christmas time. It certainly sounds that way. Again, you do wonder about goaltending there again. I think that they've kind of blended in with the rest of the mushy middle for me. 2 years ago, they were a team that were on the rise. You know, Todd McClellan had this team in a pretty good position and going in the right direction. And not a knock at Jim Hiller. I just don't see much there. And I do see Andrzej Kopitar getting older. Quentin Byfield is the real deal. Quentin Byfield is a great young player, but I don't see much more there. And I'd like to be wrong with them because they're good people. I think Rob Blake's in a tough spot this year.
Byfield and Clark are going to have their day in the sun. It's just not going to be this year.
Clark could be the it could be the ticket here because without Doughty, you were really thin on right side D. In fact, like Kyle Burrows may play second pair there.
But they're not, he's
that's a lot to put on a young guy.
Right. It's the second year of an ELC.
No, I know,
there's only so much he
but
can do.
you know, he has the pedigree. He's terrific with the puck. I think he's going to have to be a catalyst for them there. And John's right. Like if Byfield takes the next step, not sort of unlike the young Kraken players too. If Byfield takes the next step, watch out.
I tell you what, Matty, I think he's already taken that step. I really do. His coming out party was the playoffs 2 years ago against Edmonton. And even though they didn't win the series, people walked out of the arena saying, wow, that Byfield is going to be a star. And I think he became that star last season.
Yeah, 55 points. And I mean, you watch him move with that sort of size. He's only scratching the surface. He actually reminds me a little bit of Eric Lindros when I watch him play.
Oh, yeah.
John, which is a terrifying thought. Yeah.
So strong.
I know he hasn't played down the middle much yet, although he may factor there eventually. But, you know, the enormous size, the way he moves, maybe not quite as physical yet. We'll see. And then, of course, you look over the Central, where I think everybody suspects that Colorado and Dallas are going to be playoff teams. I like Nashville. I didn't love the contracts they gave those two players, those two forwards, but I think they will have an impact this year. Not to mention, as we've talked about, Nashville has all sorts of future assets to play. And so the question for me there is Utah or Minnesota. Is one of those teams going to step up and say we're a playoff club?
Well, I think I can't see Minnesota still doing it. I think this is the last year of the hangover there. They're still around $15 million under everybody else when you think of dead money with the Parise and Suter contracts. I do like Utah. I think Utah is going to be a fun team to watch. Goaltending will be the key there. Connor Ingram is going to be under a ton of pressure to respond. You guys are forgetting Winnipeg.
Well, that was going to be my last question.
Winnipeg is not a bad hockey club. Winnipeg looks like on paper that they haven't made many changes. That's the frustration with Jets fans. But they still have Connor Hellebuck. They still have Josh Morrissey. They still have Kyle Connor. And so I think and they've signed Mark Scheifele to this long-term deal a year ago. I think this is Mark Scheifele's moment, and he has to respond. He has to elevate to be that player that everybody has given him credit for. He has not responded well enough in the last few years, and he needs to. He needs to bear down. 82 games is a long season, and Mark Scheifele better show up every night.
Yeah, that's a fair shout, John. I should have involved Winnipeg.
John, from a business standpoint, how important is the season to Winnipeg? Because there's
Like,
not a
huge.
yeah, like if they stub their toe, I'm really worried about the pictures that we're going to see in Winnipeg.
It's going to be difficult there. They have to work hard. This is something that I don't think anybody in Winnipeg ever envisioned when they. We were all there on that afternoon when they sold out the building in 11 minutes. But it's come back to roost, and Winnipeg, the Jets have to re-engage with the franchise in so many ways. And that's a real challenge in a town that loves their sports, but has been hit hard economically in the last 5 years. And really, quite frankly, the team has underperformed in the postseason.
Always been a fickle market, though. I can remember some great Bombers teams not drawing as people thought, and let's face it, just not a big market by NHL standards. And I know Mark Chipman is the face of ownership there, but as I always say about the Jets when they talk about financial struggles, David Thompson could buy and sell every other owner the league over.
Sure, he could, but David Thompson never ever envisioned that team losing money. That team, even
it's pro sports, man. Like from time to time, when you suck, you lose money. That's kind of how it works.
For the first 7 years, he was right.
Yeah,
first 7 years he was right, and the last 3 have been a difficult, have been really hard.
Yeah. Anyways, great stuff, John. So excited for the season here. Thank you for this. You'll be joining us on Tuesdays.
I have one question for you guys. Could you imagine? Could you envision the Vancouver Canucks playing a 1:30 Tuesday game at home and the fans not being upset?
See, I sort of love it
on
as
night,
a one-off for opening.
Hold on. Sure, you love it when it's in Seattle, but would you love it if it was Vancouver?
Fair point. If I'm a ticket holder and I've got kids in school today and I have to sort of rearrange my day to make it to the hockey game and pay for the privilege of it, I don't know.
1:30 Tuesday afternoon babysitter. What?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously?
Yeah. John, enjoy the Kraken game, and we'll catch up with you because we know you can watch. You ain't got anything else to do. You're not playing golf today.
Sure.
Until next Tuesday.
Cheers.
It's happy hour on Sekeres and Price. Today's beer of the day from Yellow Dog is the Retriever Golden Ale.
Some price from the Historic Wall Center. You can text us 778-402-9680. Email live at sekeresandprice.com. All goes to the Great Clips text message inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
And join us October 19th. The season here. We're kicking it off with the first Canucks Army watch party presented by Fountain Tire at our home for the fans. Greta Bar, YVR. Doors open at 3. You know the drill. Tickets going fast. Hit up nationgear.ca before they're gone. We've got it all. Prizes, trivia, more to keep the energy buzzing all night. And this time we're doing it in support of the BC Mental Health Foundation. Don't miss out. Biggest kickoff party of the year. Be there and join us all season long. Visit nationgear.ca to reserve your spot. So, British Columbia Lions have opened the upper bowl for their season finale versus the Montreal Alouettes on October 19th. That's a Saturday with a 4 p.m. kickoff, so already expecting a good crowd there. Needless to say, the Saturdays in the fall seem a better date for the Lions than the Fridays. We went through it yesterday. They're in Regina this Saturday. If they win, then they could clinch second place and a third consecutive West Division semifinal hosting duty with a win over the Alouettes that day. If they win versus Saskatchewan and lose to Montreal, we did not outline this yesterday, they're going to have to wait around a full week until the final game of the CFL regular season, Calgary at Saskatchewan, on October 26th.
They've got the final bye.
They've got the bye on the final weekend of the CFL season. Boy, I wish that every team.
God damn.
Yeah. So anyways, they would have to wait around basically. So they won't have a ton of time to sell the West semifinal if that scenario presents. And of course, if they lose to Saskatchewan, they finish third and they would likely go back to Regina for the West Semi unless Winnipeg were to happen to lose out their versus Toronto at Montreal, and Saskatchewan able to beat Calgary and leapfrog at the death the Bombers for the West Division first place. And Mark Doman was busy on social media yesterday, Lions owner. I'll read the caption. We're more determined than ever to hashtag bring back SFU football with Luke Simard as SFU's new athletics director. We're excited for what's ahead to continue conversations with him and President Joy Johnson. Mr. Doman saying we are not going away. The football community here in BC and the Lower Mainland wants to see football back at that institution. And one has to think if they are bringing football back at that institution, it makes sense to do it at the U Sport level, have your natural rival in UBC,
Yes.
reignite the Shrum Bowl as opposed to traveling to all these itty bitty schools throughout the
Southern
States.
United States and,
Yes.
and such.
I mean, it made some sense when you were playing in the, what was it, Greater Northwest Conference, whatever it was, and at least you were playing teams in your orbit here in the Pacific Northwest. Alas, when the road trip started going to California and Texas and you started getting your doors blown off, it made a whole lot.
On the selling
sense.
of the semifinal, we've got to figure this out because I've seen it with the Whitecaps when, Canadian Championships and even Leagues Cup, when you win a Leagues Cup match and all of a sudden you got another match in 3 days and you got to sell it. You have to be able to sell these things with intention sort of reservations, that as soon as they win the game, boom, it kicks in and you get charged. Like, you got to be able to sell that game.
They may well already sell it to their season ticket subscribers, and if the game doesn't happen, it's applied as a discount to the next year. I'm not sure if they're doing that. Of course, Blake, there is also, and some coaches would be demurred by this, the bulletin board material. Right?
Oh my God.
Oh, look at that. They're selling a game they don't have already. Anyways,
It's just business.
Whitecaps, as we know, have the huge game Sunday against LAFC, 4:30 at BC Place. The makeup date, the game in hand that we've been pointing to, boy, it seems like forever, which could allow the Caps to sneak out of this wild card round standing that they're in right now. Got to finish top 7 to avoid that wild card play-in game and guarantee your spot in the second round of the MLS playoffs.
The playoff possibilities are still very delicious, by the way. Like, there's a very real possibility the Whitecaps could face Seattle in that first round best of 3, which would be a lot of fun.
We were in Seattle the last time they played in the playoffs.
Yes.
That was not so
Let's
much
not
fun.
talk about that. So here's the tale of the tape, though, for the coming weekend. Vancouver without Sam Adekubi, Ali Ahmed, Andres Kubas, Ryan Gold, Fafa Pico, and Pedro Vite. LAFC without Denny Bouanga, Omar Campos, Maxime Chanot, David Martinez, and Kiki Oliveira. So Oliveira and Bouanga are big-time losses for LAFC.
I was going to say, give us the tale of the tape. Who's better off? Whose skeletal crew is...
LAFC is better off, but, it's not by a super wide margin. So, I'm not going to say it's a second squad matchup because that would discredit the, 6 to 8 guys that are dressing for each team that are full-blooded first teamers, but it's the 1.5 team. It's not the full-on first team for either side. So it's not ideal. And you hope they can figure a way to avoid this kind of scenario, because it's a game of import. Like, hey, they're both in the playoffs, but it is a game of import in terms of seeding. So we'll see what happens.
More soccer news here in town. How about Christine Sinclair, the legend, FIFA's all-time goal scorer, gold medalist, Olympic champion, of course, with Canada, and a longtime sensation in Portland in professional soccer. She's coming home. She has joined the ownership group of Vancouver Rise FC alongside Whitecaps majority owner Greg Kerfoot. She was funny. She said, Kerfoot's the main owner. I'm just sneaking in. This is the NSL startup team here in Vancouver.
Yes. So she says it's a minority sliver. It's just to be involved, But maybe that grows in terms of her
Mhm.
duties. Maybe there's another title to be added besides minority owner.
And she's been a pioneer, and of course, she has been asking for this, as all the ladies have, for the Canadian women's national team. And so here it is, women's professional soccer coming back here with Vancouver Rise.
Still haven't announced the
FC.
venue, I believe, but I think the odds are on that it'll be at Swangard.
I was absolutely astonished by this stat on baseball. The divisional playoff format is 30 years old now. Blake and I are old enough to remember a time when there was 4 divisions in baseball. You had to win it to make the playoffs. 4 teams made the playoffs. You played the League Championship Series and the World Series, and that was it. Well,
I never understood it.
30 years ago, they expanded the playoffs to the divisional series. At the time, it was 3 division winners and 1 wild card. They have modified that since. But, Blake, according to OptaStats, this is the first time ever all 4 divisional series are tied 1 game apiece.
Wow.
That seems inconceivable. So here we are. It should be some fun baseball as the week goes along. You have to think at least 1, if not a couple, maybe all 4 of those series go to a deciding game 5. It is a best of 5. And how about Abbotsford's Cade Smith, relief pitcher with the Cleveland Guardians? 1.2 scoreless innings yesterday. He fanned 2. He's now up to 3 perfect innings in the postseason. He continues this incredible season that he has had for the Guardians, a big piece of their bullpen, a big reason why this Cleveland team is where it is. Alas, they fall yesterday to Detroit. Dramatic 3-run home run by Kerry Carpenter.
There's been
dominant closer, Emmanuel Clase.
There's been some big moments in these playoffs.
There really has.
You know, like it's
There
one thing
really
to get
has.
walk-offs in the regular season where you've got 15 games going on and,
Yep.
you know, you're down to a handful of games at most on a given day, not even a handful, obviously. And we're seeing walk-offs, we're seeing lead-off home runs. Like, you know, it's good drama.
Baseball playoffs seemingly never disappoint. We
No.
talked about how delicious these matchups are with a regional rivalry series, Detroit and Cleveland, just a 2.5-hour drive. The David and Goliath Royals versus Yankees series, the Southern California, and does that thing have some piss and vinegar after fans threw balls at left fielder Jerickson Profar, right fielder Fernando Tatis. There's a whole lot of bad blood in that Padres-Dodgers series. And then Mets and Phillies has been Castellanos at it again for the Phillies. So I am really looking forward to catching some baseball. What a wonderful time of year in sports. That you got the NHL dropping the puck this week.
Well,
in the midst of these incredible baseball series.
And then, Matt, the NFL primetime games have been very good this year.
Pretty good last night.
It wasn't a classic, but it was close enough, and there was big plays, and I was interested.
Those Saints unis. Fantastic.
The
NFL has really picked up the unis.
They've nailed that this year, too, for sure.
Poll question results from Monday. Best Canucks management of all time. And boy, did you folks want to be heard on this. 2,350 votes. The options were Pat Quinn, Burke Nonis, Gillis Gilman, Rutherford Allvin, and the winner, Gillis Gilman, got 36% of the vote. Rutherford Allvin got 33%. Pat Quinn got 22%. And Burke and Nonis got 9%. I'll read this one from Rob. Rob was not alone. Complete no-brainer. Anyone who didn't select Pat Quinn either doesn't understand hockey or wasn't born yet. When we fashioned this poll question, we knew there will be a lot of people out there on social media, YouTube, and X that are not old enough to remember the Pat Quinn era, in some cases not old enough to remember the Burke Nonis era or even the Gillis Gilman era who vote. So Rob, you were well heard. There were a lot of comments about, oh, your voters are too young here. They don't remember the great Pat Quinn. Desert Dog says Gillis Gilman orchestrated the most successful era in Canucks history. They changed how the organization did business. They won a lot. Bradley says if Rutherford and Allvin get us the cup, they win in a landslide, but got to get to the dance. Dylan, the Benning bros are fuming right now. And Watson says, Quinn era put the team on the map. Gillis era changed the way the team operated. Allvin Rutherford era needs a cup.
Mike Rogerson, give us the last numbers on YouTube though for this poll question, because it was a very different reaction on YouTube with a good number of respondents as well. What do you have for that poll question on yesterday?
Well, unfortunately, YouTube doesn't play back the polls from live stream. So
Oh,
we can't see it today. But you're right. It was very different.
At last check, because I did have my screen still up. At last check, it was 57% for Rutherford Allvin. Gillis and Gilman were in third, behind Pat Quinn. It was 18% Pat Quinn, 16% for Gillis and Gilman.
We said yesterday you can make a case for all four.
Yeah,
Burke and Nonis didn't do well here, but that was the era that added star players: Sedins, Luongo, Kessler. Anyways, fun poll. Thank you for voting there. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. Calling myself on a couple. I said the Casey DeSmith deal on the eve of the season was the Sam Lafferty deal on the eve of the season. DeSmith was a little earlier, and then. Forgive me, it's been a while since the Canucks have avoided LTIR. There is season opening IR. You can put the player on IR before you set the roster, not subsequently. Well, you can do it subsequently too, but the Canucks went season opening IR with Joshua and Demko. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you connecting and spending some time with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube. We are live on many of those platforms. 12 noon Pacific time. 12 noon Pacific time. New time there each and every weekday. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us telling you about. Keep it local. Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.